Hi, I'm Kyle Mason, Vermont's Bennington County Forester, and this is the third part of a three-part series that we have done. If you missed the other ones, I would strongly recommend that folks check them out. They're on the One World Conservation website. You should be able to navigate and find them to there. But today what we're going to be talking about is what the state of Vermont can offer landowners. So the kind of services the state of Vermont offers for forest landowners. And again, my name is Kyle Mason, I'm the Bennington County Forester. So what that means is I deal with the private sector in Bennington County. So if you have land in Bennington County and you want help managing your land, learning some technical resources, any of that sort of thing, you're welcome to give me a call. My contact information will be at the end of this presentation. So what we're going to talk about today is I'm going to start by talking about Vermont's tax incentive program, also known as UVA or current use or land use. They're all the same name for or different names for the same program. That's going to be our main topic today. We're going to cover other things too, but that's going to be the main thing. So we're going to talk about the benefits, why you might want to join that program, the qualifications you need to be able to enroll into the program, a brief outline of the standards of the program, so what's expected of you when you're in it. Well, that as well, so I kind of just covered that. And how you enroll into the program. And then after that, we're going to jump ships and we're going to talk about a resource called vtinvasives.org, which is a fantastic source if you want to know anything about invasive species. And then we're going to talk about the stewardship program, the working lands grant, and we're going to end it with forest health specialists. So staff members working for the state of Vermont that try to ensure, stay ahead of emerald ash borer, things like that. So we're going to start out with the UVA program. Really quick disclaimer before I get started, since this is going to be on YouTube. I'm a forester, not a lawyer, so this is a tax program. So a lot of the tax and jarbledy-goo and that side of it is beyond my ability. So I know the forestry side of the program, not the lawyer side and all that sort of thing. I work for the Forests and Parks. I don't work for the Department of Agriculture. I don't work for the tax program. Again, so my specialties are in the forestry side of the program. There's an ag side of it. There's a conservation side of the program. But those are outside of my, we're going to cover them, but I just want to make sure people know that that's not my main specialty. And this information, since this is going to be available to folks online, is accurate as of 2016. So the legislature is always changing things on us. So if you're watching this in 2018 or something like that, check in and make sure nothing has changed, because chances are it has. And this information, again, is based on my current understanding of the program. So if I mess something up, I apologize. All right, here we go. Let's get started. So the current use program has 3 different names, which is extremely confusing for people. You hear it called current use. You can hear it be called UVA, which stands for use value appraisal. Sometimes they shorten that to use value. And it can also be known as land use. And to make it even more confusing, not only do people verbally say these things, but it's in the writing and literature, and there are those 3 different names as well. So it really is a program under 3 different names. So the goals of the program, there's 2 main goals that were established when the program first showed up. There may be additional goals that might be added on later. Wildlife is starting to become a bigger part of the program. But when it was originally established, and still to this day, the 2 main goals right now are to slow the development of Vermont. So to make it so that a landowner who owns forest land or farmland can keep it as farmland or forest land. It's easier for them to afford it, so they don't lose their land. Second thing is to ensure a steady flow of timber into the market. So the program showed up and was passed into law in 1979, became official in 1980, and at that time mills were starting to drop out of Vermont, starting to go out of business. They still kind of are, but the program, one of the goals of the program was to try to make sure that there was sustainable forest products feeding those mills to keep them alive, because those mills are what keep the forestry industry going as a whole. The program is focused on the land, not the landowner, and that's really important concept to understand when you start looking at it. So there's, someone who lives in New Jersey can own land in Vermont, and they can enroll in the program. It's about the land, not about the landowner.
Question.
Yes.
Back to use value and current use in the three names.
Yes.
Are there three sub-organizations within the state, or are all three of those titles managed by the same person?
Well, we're going to go into that in a little bit.
Okay.
But essentially, it's a tax incentive program run by the state of Vermont's tax program. And there's a forestry side of the program and an ag side of the program, and they've said that we're not forestry specialists, so we're going to give the Department of Forests and Parks and Recreation, who I work for, the right to kind of manage this program for us from the forestry perspective. And they did the same for the agricultural side.
With different people?
Yeah, so they're different departments, different agencies even, but
Different silos?
different silos, yeah, exactly. But they're there's a part of the program that's run by them, and we're going to go into that.
Okay, thank you.
So to understand the program, first we need to understand how property taxes work in Vermont. Let's start there. So town listers assign a value to each property. It's known as the fair market value. And they do that for all the properties in the entire town. They then take, the town then makes their annual budgets, roads, schools, fire department, whatever it is in the town. And they have their bill at the end, the amount of revenue they need to make from their taxes. So they take the total amount of value in all of the land in the town and divide it into their budget, and that gives them the tax rate. So it's different for every town, and it changes every year because of the budget of the town. Then the tax rate is applied then to each individual property, and that determines what your taxes are. So here's an example of what I mean by that. So here's an example property, completely made up. It's 100 acres. The town lister said the property is worth $1,000 an acre. So 100 times 1,000, the whole property is worth $100,000. The tax rate that was set by dividing one thing into the other was set at 2.5%. So you multiply that into that, and this place is getting charged $2,500 a year in taxes for this example. Okay, so what current use does then is think about the name, and all three names actually make complete sense. Use value, current use, land use. It's all about what the land is being used for. So it's a declaration between you and the state that you are not using that land for developmental purposes or for sale purposes. You are using that as forest land, or you are using that as ag land, and therefore you should be charged the tax rate that is valued at instead of fair market value. So that number is determined every year. The state of Vermont has one for forestry and another one for agriculture, and we'll go into that a little more, but here's a basic example of what happens. So the state of Vermont this year, and this number goes up and down, there's this equation that they use every year, but generally it's around 120 a year for forest land. So here's a 100-acre, same 100-acre property. Now the assessed value for tax purposes, not for if you want to sell the property down the road or anything, but for tax purposes, is set at 122 in this example. So the total value then is $12,200. The same tax rate is used. So this example, out of current use, this property's taxes is $2,500 every year. In current use, it's $305. So that's a savings. Well, I already talked about that. That's a savings of $2,195 for this example of a property enrolled in current use. Now the towns don't lose out on this. The state reimburses the towns for the lost revenue. So basically, it's a huge investment for Vermont's taxpayers. It's about $14 million to run the program annually. And most of that is reimbursing the towns for the lost revenue. So it's an investment, and so what are the taxpayers getting out of it? Well, let's look at the goals again. The goals of the program are the slow development of Vermont. So by making this property taxes way less, it's a lot easier for that landowner to hold on to the land. And it's to ensure a steady flow of local products to the mills. We're going to talk about how that's going to play into this more as well, but those are what the taxpayers are getting out of doing this. And again, like I said before, it's about the land, not the landowner. Okay, so as an insurance to the taxpayers of the state of Vermont, there's a lien that goes onto the deed once you enter into the program. The lien So, oops, well, sorry, I pushed the button too quick. The lien goes on to the program, and the landowner is required to identify the parts of his properties that fall under the different categories. So here's an example of my grandparents' property here, and a map I made for them. Here's an agricultural field, so that's enrolled in ag land. Here's a bunch of forest land, that's enrolled as forest land, and this is a house right here. And you see these check marks? That's excluded, that's not enrolled in the program. And we'll go into what can be enrolled and what can't be enrolled in a second. That's just an example of what needs to happen. Okay, so now let's talk about those categories I just mentioned. Okay, there are 3 of them. There's 3 main categories. The first is conservation land, the second is agriculture land, and the third is forest land. Each category has a different appraised rate, and the state sets those appraised rates. Forest land is about 120, it goes up and down. Ag land's around 340, goes up and down. Conservation land, I don't know. You'll have to go online or do some research. I don't have any doings with conservation land, so I don't know. Domestic sites like those houses we saw can't be included in the program, so businesses can't either. So if you have a gas station on your property, that's a bad example, but let's just use it. You would have to exclude it. If the building is a dwelling, then it needs at least 2 acres around it. If you have a lawn, that's not forest land, that needs to be excluded. Your driveway, if your driveway is for domestic purposes only, it needs to be excluded. If that driveway is accessing your property also for the forest land, then it can be included, because it's the access for the forest land. And we'll go into more of that too in a little bit. But again, here's a quick zoom up. There's the excluded land, here's some ag fields, and there's some forest land. Okay, so to qualify for conservation land, you have to meet this blah 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 long standard. And I'm not a lawyer, and I only half understand this, but basically this section is for nonprofit organizations that are in the business of conserving land. Can get into the program without meeting the other standards. And they still deal with the Department of Forest, Parks, and Recreation. They just deal with people in Montpelier, not me. So I don't know anything about it. The second one I mentioned is ag land. This one you need to meet one of the 4 criterias. So you need to either be a farmer and farming on that land, and a farmer is someone who is defined as someone that makes 2/3 of their income from the act of farming. Or you need to lease that land to a farmer, and that farmer needs to be defined as a farmer and be actively farming on the land. Or you need to be farming on the land and generating $2,000 of income. Or you need to have at least 25 acres and be farming on it. If any of those 4 categories you fall in, you can enroll the land into agriculture land.
Is that continuous acres or?
No, there's no, well, 25 would be continuous acres. The other ones would not be.
Okay.
Yeah, so the only one that really has an acre specification in ag land is if you're not making $2,000 and you're not a farmer. So if you had a Christmas tree farm that was 25 acres in size that you didn't make $2,000 on, you could qualify. To get into this program right now, all you need to do is have one of those maps. So you need to maintain one of those maps, and you need to be able to prove to the tax department you meet one of these qualifications if they come at you to look at it. Okay, farm buildings. So farms can be enrolled. If you have a farm that has a dwelling like if you also use it for hunting camp or something and you have beds in there, then it has to be excluded, 2 acres. As soon as you put a place for someone to sleep, it needs a 2-acre exclusion. Other than that, a barn is qualified as ag land, so agricultural building.
TPs don't count, tents?
No, a tent, permanent structures, I believe. But like I said, I'm not a lawyer or one of the taxpayer or a Department of Ag guy. Farmhouses can qualify under certain situations. So if you're a farmer and you live in your farmhouse, it doesn't qualify. But if you're a farmer and you have employees that part of their payment is free rent in the one building there, then it can qualify. And I would suggest you contact the tax department to learn more about that, because I don't know a whole lot about it. It's just one of the things you can do in ag land. Okay, forest land. Here we go. This is what I know about. Let's get into it. Yes.
I have a question. You're saying there are 3 criteria to be eligible for current use, or 3 kinds of land that can be enrolled.
Yes.
Conserved, ag, and forest.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
So if your land is protected by a conservation easement, are you saying you don't then need to have a forest management plan and a farm?
No. So conservation land is, so if it's for a nonprofit organization that the whole thing that they do is buy land and try to conserve it, they can enroll and get a tax benefit into the state. If you're not a nonprofit organization, that
But if the
category
easement is
doesn't,
owned by one,
it doesn't matter. Who's the deed owned by?
right?
You. So it's all about you. It's not about the property that, yeah. So they own an easement on your deed, which actually technically the current use program is an easement on your deed as well. They don't own the property, they own an easement on it. Okay, so forest land is a little more complicated, well, a little more stingent than ag land and conservation land. So you need to have at least 25 continuous acres of forest land to qualify. It can be separated by fields. If you own one piece of property that a town road goes through the middle of and you have 10 on one side and 15 on the other side, you still qualify. It's just that one property, you can't have like another property, 5 miles down the road to make the 25 acres. It has to be continuous. You need to have 350 stems of commercial species per acre. That means you need to be growing some trees on the land. There needs to be trees present. 350 stems an acre is super, super easy to get. Doesn't matter if they're big trees, they're little trees. A field that's been abandoned for 20 years probably would qualify because it would have trees scattered throughout it. I should also say this standard is put on hold for regeneration harvest. So if you do a big harvest and you eliminate 350 stems an acre, you don't get kicked out because you're regenerating the forest, bringing it back to more trees. You need an up-to-date map, just like the ag stuff that shows where all the forest land is. And you need to have an updated forest management plan that meets all the standards of the program, and you are required to follow it. And then the last thing is, you also need to agree to follow all of Vermont's AMP standards. AMP stands for Acceptable Management Practices. And what they are things that should happen on your land when you have a log job done. So if you're logging and you have a road that goes up a hill, one of the AMP standards requires that you put water bars in that road so that you're not eroding the road away. You're diverting the water off the road. There's a lot of stuff that deals with streams. It's essentially a water quality standard while logging is happening. Okay, so just like the farm buildings, if you have a gravel pit on your property and that gravel pit is used only to maintain your forest roads, you can enroll that into the program. If you're also selling that gravel to the town, you cannot enroll that into the program. That's now a commercial site. Forestry buildings as well. So if you have a building you store your skidder in and you use that skidder to go out and pull trees down, you can enroll that into the program. Forestry buildings and forestry use stuff. Okay, so types of forest land. Now, under that category, there's a bunch of different types of forest land that need to meet certain standards. So the main one is productive forest land. And you need to have at least 20 acres of productive forest land on your property to qualify. Productive forest land is the land that you're growing timber on. It's the land that, it's most of what you see other than when you walk through a swamp. If it can grow, it can grow anything from veneer quality sugar maple to low quality red spruce. But as long as it's producing a timber product, then you're good to go with that. And again, this is where that second part of the program goals come into play. So ensuring a steady flow of forest products into the markets. That's where it's coming from. Okay, so the next category is non-productive forest land. So that's swamps, ledgy areas that can't grow much timber, really high elevation points. Usually there's a couple spots of that on most land, and it just gets mapped a little differently. You can have as much of this as your property has and still enroll in the program with approval from the county forester, so long as you at least have 20 acres of productive forest Okay, significant wildlife habitat. That is a category that allows you to shift one of your goals toward meeting wildlife habitat needs. So on special sites. So an example would be a deer winter yard would be a good example. You're still required to produce a timber product off that land, but you're adjusting your management to no longer be just about timber. Now it's about the deer that live in those trees. So there's mass tree areas for bears and things like that. And to qualify, you need to get someone from Fish and Wildlife to sign off on it. So you have to prove that it's actually significant in the state. Or have some kind of mapping, some kind of evidence, a case to bring toward the county forester.
Would geese count?
Well, if you could get someone to say it's a special site that's if the geese didn't have that site because you were managing timber, they would be out of luck. They wouldn't be able to go anywhere else, or your timber would negatively affect them there. Yeah, so like a deer winter yard is like a big hemlock stand. That's a really good example of one. So you want to maintain some cover on that. You try to do an uneven age hemlock stand with always having cover, because the hemlock catches the snow and then the deer can move around easier.
Yeah, we do it a lot.
Yeah.
Deer,
So you could, if you enrolled it, if you made a case, and someone like one of the biologists came down and they said, yes, this is being used by deer, yes, this is a critical site, then you could enroll it into the program with county forester approval. Miscellaneous. So miscellaneous is all those kind of weird sites, like the gravel pit that I showed you would be an example of miscellaneous. They also cover if you had a cemetery burial site can go under miscellaneous. If you had a family burial site or something that's less than an acre, you could enroll that in the program and you would put it under the miscellaneous category. And obviously you wouldn't manage timber or tip trees on it. Yeah.
Back to ag land, would it help to have ag land include significant wildlife habitats?
So the Department of Agriculture is kind of in charge of the ag land side, and right now all they have is you just need to meet one of those 4 criteria. That's all they say you need to do.
But that does not include wildlife.
Yeah, this is the forestry side.
Right.
So forestry side has someone like me looking over it. Ag land doesn't really. So.
But I'm thinking specifically of bobolinks.
Yeah. So right now there's nothing stopping someone that's enrolled in ag land to push their mowing back till the end of August, so that you can have bobolinks in your field. You're still producing a agricultural product off that field, so you would still qualify.
Okay.
You just wouldn't call it significant wildlife. It's not a specific category like it is in forest land. It's just how you're doing it. You just need to make sure you're still pulling the product off of it.
I see.
Yep. Okay, so ESTAs. Ecologically significant treatment areas. So these are like extremely special areas. So vernal pools qualify. True old growth forests would qualify. They're like extremely special sites. Rare natural communities qualify under that. So if you have like a red pine, natural red pine growing, that's probably one of the rare natural communities, and you could enroll in that, and you could protect it because there's not very much of that in Vermont. In this area, we have a lot of dry oak hop hornbeam is a natural community. We have a lot that just barely qualifies. It's rare. It's not rare in the Taconic Mountain Range, which is where we are here. So you go up high enough, you find a lot of it, but it's rare in Vermont overall, so that still qualifies as well. And you'll see like a sage grass when you walk into it all of a sudden. It'll feel very different. Okay, and the last one is open land. So open land is an area that you're maintaining as an opening either for, not aesthetic purposes, but so if you had an orchard and you wanted to mow the orchard, once a year, brush hog the orchard so that you could maintain your orchard there for wildlife habitat, you can enroll that under open land. There's a restriction on the amount of open land you can have. You can only have so much.
Cross-country skiing, is that a recreational purpose that you can have open land?
So when you enroll in the, I would say most of the cross-country skiing would happen on skid roads on a property that's enrolled in UVA. And actually I did an inspection of a beautiful property that they had beautiful ski trails set up, and they had set it up so that their skidder was using those trails as well. So they qualified for the program, and they got to have their sweet cross-country ski set up. Yeah, so working with your forester and manipulating so you're meeting the standards of this program and what you want to do is what you should be doing. So sugar bushes is a category that can either be enrolled in either ag or forestry. You could pick. The argument is that maple syrup is an agricultural product, so therefore you're producing an ag product on that land, so you can enroll that as ag. Or you can enroll it under forestry. It's a forest, you just happen to be producing a forest product of sap instead of timber. You still need to produce timber as well, but if you enroll in forestry, but your primary objective becomes sap production.
So if it's under ag, you don't need to produce timber, it's just the sugar bush?
Yep. Yep. Yep, there's no real standards under ag other than you need to be making a product. Yeah, there's a lot of push for this to try to abolish the ag side of this, but take advantage of it while you can, right? Yeah, so blah blah blah. I lost where I was. Okay, yeah. So if you do it under forestry, this is what you need to make sure you do as well. So the intent to harvest sap must be outlined in your management plan and shown on the map. So that map I showed needs to say this is the sugar bush. UVA tapping guidelines must be referenced. There's a document that should be in everyone's management plan that describes, healthy habits like don't tap a tree that's 6 inches in diameter because you kill it. Put 2 taps in a tree that's 12 inches if you have this size tap. All taps must be removed as soon as buds break. And 25% of the stocking of that stand needs to be non-sugar maple, which is pretty smart anyway if you're trying to have a sustainable sugar bush. Studies have shown now that when you have monocultures of sugar, if you only have sugar maples, they're really susceptible to maple borer and other insects. That 25% seems to be the minimum point where the insects don't completely take over. And that includes red maple. That 25% can be red maple, and you can tap those too. Yeah.
So I'm curious that you were saying if you need to make a change to the forest management plan, it doesn't currently include a sugar bush, you need to do that. And there's a deadline for that, like September 1st?
No, so that's an application. We'll get into that.
Okay.
So basically, if you're going to tap on land,
Let's
it
say
needs
we
to
want
be.
to next spring,
Yeah, if
and
you're
it's
going
not
to
in the
tap,
current plan.
then you need to amend your forest management plan.
And is there some deadline for that?
Nope, you amend it whenever. You just can't tap until it's officially changed. So to tap, your management plan needs to state that it's a sugar bush, and you need to be doing these things, and it needs to state those things in the plan. So if you're trying to tap, you would want to have your forester submit an amendment to me, and then when I sign off on it, then that's now your plan. Yeah, that's the change to
And
your
that's
plan.
at any point before tapping?
Yeah, you can amend your plan at any time.
And,
So
but if you were to do it under ag, it would be the same thing, you're just taking it out of the forest?
under
management?
ag, you're going to need to do a whole nother process because
Okay.
right now, if you're enrolled under forest land, you need to basically re-enroll that land under ag land.
Got it.
So now you're dealing with September
Got
1
it. I
and
see.
the application form and redoing your map.
Okay,
You're to change it. That's that deadline.
that's
would
the
be for that.
deadline, okay.
Yeah, but if you're staying under forestry,
Then it's just an amendment?
yeah.
Okay.
And to be honest, all these things are healthy practices, and if you want an organic sugar bush, you need to do all this anyway.
Well, that's nicer. I just thought there was that September 1st plan, and I was thinking if under ag you don't need to do it, then that might be the way to go, but it sounds like that's the opposite, that it's better to...
Well, it's up to you. I mean, you save more taxes. So the tax rate for forest land is like 120, the tax rate for ag land is like 340. So it's less taxes if you're
Right.
enrolled in the forestry program as well.
And it already is, so.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. And really, if you really want to do the right, a sustainable sugar bush, if you don't just want to milk it and get the sap out of it and not worry about it, then you really should be doing what's in the forestry stuff anyway. That's why it's there.
Yeah,
It's
that's
because
helpful.
it's all good science that has shown that stuff makes a healthy sugar bush.
No, that's great. I just thought there was that deadline.
Yeah, not unless you're changing to ag.
Got it.
So trees shall not be tapped on UVA forest land unless it's specified. So that's grounds for getting removed from the program if you're tapping trees and it's not in your plan. Okay, again, just like the other stuff, sugar bushes can be, or your sugar house can be enrolled because it's either an ag building because you're producing an ag product, or it's a forestry building because you're producing a forestry product. SAP's one of those funny things that's kind of both, right? If you put loft up there so you can stay the night, now you have a bed, now it has to be excluded. If you have a commercial type sugar bush where you're inviting people to come over, you kind of make pancakes and then nope, that doesn't qualify. That's commercial now. It's not producing an ag product. You're in a different level. Okay. So we're in. You want to get in. How do you do it? So first thing you should do is hire a consulting forester. They can help you navigate through all this stuff. That should be your very first step. And working with a professional consulting forester can help you develop the management plan. You're going to need to do it anyway. They're going to need to make the map. They're going to need to do the inventory. And just we had a talk on consulting foresters. So if you use the website and scroll back and look at Steve Hanfield's talk, he talks all about consulting foresters. So I'm not going to go into too much. I just want to give a little bit of advice real quick. So licensing is required in the state of Vermont now as of this year. So one of your questions when you're looking for a forester is, are you licensed by the state of Vermont? Second question I would ask them if I was you is, even if they are licensed, well, I guess you're not asking them this, but even if they are licensed, I would check references. Shop around, figure out how they, other clients they've had. Make sure their interests match up to your interests. There's guys that are really good at wildlife habitat, and if you're interested in that, you should hire that guy, not the guy that's really good at economics. And make sure the forester works for you. There's foresters that are procurement foresters and other folks that work for mills and log buyers and loggers. You can work with those guys, but I would strongly suggest finding a guy that represents your interests, not the mill's interests or someone else's interest. And the forester combines the latest science and your goals and conditions. That's what they should be doing. They shouldn't, unless you want them to run out there and do whatever just so you qualify for the program, that's fine. So there's kind of two approaches that I think are great depending on the type of person you are. So I really like clients that I got to coach when I did this. So I would do the inventory data, I'd sit down with them, we'd look at what's there, what the options are, what their goals are, and we'd come up with a plan together, and then I would go back and write the plan. But that costs a little more, it's more time consuming, and some people don't want to deal with that at all. So there's guys out there that are really good at just taking over. So determine which side of that scope you want to be on and figure out which side of the scope that forester is on. Okay, back to how you get into it. So applications are due September 1st to the tax department. And they're available. You can call me up. I'll send you to the link. Or if you're savvy with the internet, you can go online and get the application right online. You can actually apply right online now. So they're due September 1st. You could go fill one out right now, though. They just won't get processed until after September. The next thing that needs to happen is a management plan needs to come to my office by October 1st. Then the management plan is reviewed by the county forester. If you're in Bennington County, that's me. And if there's any changes that need to be made, we work with you and the consultant and make those changes, make sure you meet the standards of the program. And properties are then enrolled the following year in April 1st. So if you were to do it right now, fill out the application, I would suggest you get my first step would always be get that forester, because he can help you navigate through the application process. The quicker you get him, the quicker he can get the plan in. So that's really the main step, is find a good consulting forester and he'll help you with the rest. Okay. So yay, you're in the program now. Now what do you have to do to stay in? So there's a soft lien that's now on your deed. That's my language, that's not any lawyer's language or anything. I call it a soft lien because remember that one first goal, to slow the development of Vermont? It wasn't to prevent, it was to slow. So it's to give landowners options of not developing, but not prevent them from developing. So you can remove yourself from the program at any time, remove the lien from your deed by filling out a form, and I'll go into that at the end. But you can get out of the program. It's not permanent. like land trust or some of the conservation easements are permanent. Current use is not permanent. And again, the tax department is the one that maintains this program. We kind of already talked about that, so I'll glaze through this. Forests and parks monitor the forestry side of it. And county foresters like me come onto properties once every 10 years just to make sure you're following your management plan. I try to, what the best is if the landowner comes with me and we get to talk about fun things and check things out all at once at the same time. Sometimes people have their foresters come with me instead of themselves, or sometimes no one comes with me and I just go do it. So to remain eligible in forest land once you're in, you need to follow your management plan at all times. I can't stress that enough. You have to, if that document was made, you need to follow it. You need to file what's called a FEMAR report after every time you do a harvest. A FEMAR report is a Forest Management Activity Report. It's basically a declaration that you did a harvest, and it comes to me, and then I can match it up to your plan and know that you did the harvest you were supposed to do. And the tax department gets a hold of it as well, and they may look at it. I don't know what they do with it. They may look at it if they think you have income fraud or something, because it declares how much timber you received. I'm not really sure what they do with it, but it goes to them as well. And every 10 years you need to have that forest management plan updated. So look on the date of the plan. It should be right on the cover if you're in the program. After 10 years you need to redo that plan. And the forester comes back out, re-inventories, redoes the plan, and you go from there. Okay, and again, that consulting forester, I'm going to say this a lot because it's the point I want to stress, is the guy that can help you navigate through all this. He should know when you got to fill out that FEMAR report. He should know when your plan's due. He should know. He should help you follow your management plan. And follow your management plan. You got to. So people that get removed. So following your management plan means that sometimes you're harvesting and sometimes you're letting timber grow. So if you're into, if you're a preservationist and you don't want to harvest timber at all, this is not the program for you. If you're a conservationist and you want a working landscape and you want to supply local products to Vermonters, then this is the program for you. Again, remember that second goal, producing a quality timber product. Okay. So since the lien is on the deed, it stays with the land if the land is sold. So if you sell your land, that lien still remains on the deed. It goes with it. That new landowner, though, if they want to continue to receive the tax benefits, the lien remains no matter what they do, unless they do the steps to get out of the program. But if they want to maintain their benefits, they need to file, used to be a change of ownership with the tax department, but now they kind of rolled that and the application together, so it's really just filling out the application form again and sending it in. And then you have to come to so you deal with two departments. You send that to the tax department, and then for me, you need to sign agreeing to the current management plan on file, or come up with a plan with me how you're going to redo the plan. This also, this needs to happen every time the deed changes names. So if you turn your property into a trust, you need to go through this whole process. Once the deed changes names, you have 30 days to get that stuff done, or else you stop receiving your benefits. And again, that consulting forester is your best asset to get you through this, get you through that paperwork. If the lien is not followed by the landowner, they lose their tax benefits. So that means if you're not following your management plan, the lien remains on the program, but you no longer receive your tax benefits. People run into this problem. The four most common issues people have is they harvest when their plan says not to harvest, or they harvest in a way that their plan does not say to harvest. So if the plan says to do a thinning and they do a clear cut, and I come out on my inspection and I'm like, whoa, look at this clear cut, you no longer have the benefits. Forgetting to file paperwork. So not updating their 10-year management plan, not filing FEMAR reports, all that kind of stuff. Not following the AMPs, so not following the water quality restrictions when logging is happening. And the last one is not cutting when their plan says to cut. So if your plan says to harvest, then it's time to harvest. Again, that consulting forester is your asset. The consulting forester should be making sure that that job is being harvested the way it should be harvested. He should be helping you with your paperwork. If it's not time to, he should be helping you make sure all the AMPs are being followed. I just can't stress that enough. Your consulting forester is the biggest tool you can have.
Is there some minimum level of harvesting that is required or maximum?
Yeah, so the consulting forester, when you write your plan, needs to justify what you're doing based on silvicultural science. So he's referencing silvicultural guides that are established guides, and he's saying this is what we had, this is the landowner's goal, this is what we're going to do. So it's so variable. You know, if you have a junky woodlot and you need to regenerate, you're going to be doing big harvests, trying to get new trees growing. If you've got a beautiful woodlot, it's just not quite ready, you might be doing thinning. You know, it's if it's ready to go because it's been growing for 100 years and the guy who owned it before you has been managing it effectively, then it's time to do a timber sale. Right? So it's going to be very variable. But the plan is based on science. Okay, so if you want to get out of the program, how do you get out? Again, that goal again is to slow, not prevent. So you fill out a, so if you get kicked out, so if you don't have to remove the entire property when you get out. You can remove sections. So let's say you own 200 acres and you want your son to be able to build his house on your property. So you could remove 2 acres from the program, and now he has, and then you could sell him that land, and now he has a place to build his house. So you don't have to move the whole thing. What you have to make sure is that the remaining portion of the property is still qualified. So you need at least 25 acres in the remaining portion. The land use tax change is applied to any portions of the property that's removed from the program. So what that is 10% of the prorated fair market value of the portion removed. So it's whatever the lister says that area that you're pulling out of the program is worth. You get charged you get taxed 10% of that. So if it's the most, if it's the only developable part of your property and you want to pull 2 acres out, that's probably worth more than the top of the hill. So it's whatever the lister says it's worth. So a new map is needed if you remove part of the property. And you pull yourself out or part of the program by filling out a notice of withdrawal from the use value appraisal program form is what it's called. And you can get that online or through my office or through the tax department. Okay, so that pretty much covers current use, and unless anyone has any questions. But the rest of it's going to be really quick. Yeah?
I do. If you decided to get out of it after 10 years of using it and getting the advantage, but you haven't harvested the timber, is that the problem?
Sure.
You
can do that. Yep.
You can say, I really,
You can remove yourself at any time.
and then you're paying your normal taxes at that point.
Yep, you pay that 10% of the prorated value, so you pay that land use tax change.
But you don't
Fee.
go, you don't go retroactive with that. You
No,
just
no,
start-
no, it's
That's
not
great.
retroactive.
Yeah,
Yeah,
really.
no, it's not. New York's is retroactive. Yeah, it's to slow the development, not prevent it.
and
So
then-
it's to give you an option of not having to develop, but not prevent you from doing it.
Okay, and my other question would be, if your land is already in a do not develop in the deed, can you still use the field?
Yeah. So you can have easements. You just gotta be careful. Check the easement. So this is a program where you have to be harvesting timber. So if their deed says you can't harvest timber, then you can't join this program.
Like you said, consult a lawyer because you only know part of.
Yeah, exactly. Consult a lawyer. Yeah, right. I'm a forester, not a lawyer. Right,
There we
yeah,
go.
exactly. Any other questions about current use before we move on? Great. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about really quick is this fantastic website called vtinvasives.org. And if you have any invasive species on your property, which are becoming a huge problem, especially here in Bennington County, this is going to be your best asset. So it's really easy, vtinvasives.org, or Google Vermont invasives will get you there as well. So this is what the website looks like. I just want to give a quick brief how to navigate through it. So right here in this corner is probably the one that most forest landowners in this area are going to be interested in. It's plants. So if you click on that, you get this nice drop-down box, and there's all sorts of things. But the one that I find, well, first off, if you want to know the new plant law involving invasive species, you can click right there and it'll tell you about it. So any plant that's considered invasive can no longer be planted, cultivated, or parts of it moved unless you're moving it to destroy it. And you can click on there and learn all about that. But right up here, the Gallery of Invaders is the spot that I find the most helpful. You click on that, and you end up here, and it has these great pictures of all the common invasive species in Vermont. And let's use burning bush here for an example. Burning bush is a fantastic, beautiful bush. A lot of people have it in their front yards. It turns bright red in the fall. It's beautiful, but it causes a lot of issues in our forests. And the birds eat the seeds and they fly out and they distribute it out. So it doesn't look like you're doing much damage by having that in your yard, because you're not seeing it pop up all over the place, but those birds are doing it in the woods. So if you were to click on that, you get this page. And there's a general fact sheet. There's information on how to get rid of that plant. There's photos to help you identify it. If you want to know why that plant's a problem, you can click on the threat and it'll tell you all about it. Methods of controls, and just a quick description of it. I mean, this will help you ID the plant fantastically.
So they're saying don't put that in your yard anymore as an ornamental. Preferably don't do that.
You're not allowed to anymore.
Oh, you're not allowed?
Yeah, it's against the law now.
I'm allergic to it. I chopped it down, it's coming back.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't like it.
You're not allowed to cultivate it, sell it, transport it, or
Oh, I'll
replant
try to
it.
kill it
Yeah.
some more.
Yeah, including bittersweet. People still sell the bittersweet vines. That's illegal now. So if you see people selling reeds on the side of the road.
I wouldn't put it on my door because I figured
Yep.
that would spread it. Yeah.
Yep, it does.
Are we
Nope.
having fun with poison parsnip?
Poison. I don't think a lot of people are cultivating that purposely. But yeah, that is an invasive. That's a problem as well.
It's not distributed along the roads to keep the deer from interacting with the cars? That's a rumor?
not that I'm aware of. So the other one is tree pests over here. And there's this First Detectors program. So if you think you have one of the invasive species you've heard of, so emerald ash borer, Asian longhorn beetle, you can get a hold of a first detector through this website and they'll come out, they're a volunteer, they'll come out and check to make sure you don't have it or not. You can report invasive species, so if you think you have it, you can report it and a guy will come out and check it out for you. One of the first detectors. There's a new Vermont firewood law. You can use this website to check that out. You can't transport firewood a certain distance. I'm not a lawyer, so I encourage you to click on that and read the law. And tree pests. So if you want to know about the tree pests, you want help do you think you might have one of them? This is the best place to go. It shows you what they look like, their signs, just like the plant one did. So this is a fantastic resource for Vermont landowners. Okay, so moving on from that, I just wanted to cover that real quick. Like I said, all these ones are going to be quick now. Stewardship program is the next one I want to cover. So the stewardship program is essentially just funding from the U.S. government that allows for all sorts of things. But one of the things it allows for, it pays for someone like me to come out to your land if you want to learn some technical. If you're like, oh, I had a logging job, I'm not sure if he had all the AMPs in. You can ask me to come out, and I can come out because of this funding that's available. It also, general forestry information to landowners, so give me a call. Tree health issues, you have a tree dying. I'm not the best at tree health issues. I'm more of a silviculturalist, but I can get you to the resources you need if I don't know what it is. If it's a common one, I'll know it. If it's not, I probably won't. Information on programs available to you. So I helped set these 3-part series up because of funding from this program. Educational outreach for kids and adults, and programs like this. So it's kind of something that flies under the radar, but it's funding that allows Vermont landowners to get access to information that they need. Okay, the last thing I want to, not the last thing, the next thing I want to cover is the Vermont Working Lands Grant, and I have a fantastic video that's real quick that we lost. That sums it up really well. Let's move on, and when she gets the video ready, then we'll watch it instead of waiting. So the last thing to cover before we watch the video then is the forest health specialist. So the state of Vermont hires forest health specialists. This is Jim Esden. I don't know if you guys recognize him. He talks here all the time.
Yeah.
He's great. This is a video of him I found on YouTube talking about hemlock woolly adelgid. So they're doing things like out there working with the invasive species, trying to spread the word, trying to look for cures, trying to figure out, the different health issues that are happening in Vermont.
I'm going to unplug it because I think we're up.
Okay. Oh, perfect. Oh, we'll get back to that after. Okay, so she's going to put on the Working Lands Grant video, which will just be a couple minutes. And then we'll finish up.
sometimes things go as planned. I love it when that happens.
We've already grown the business substantially. We've had our best year ever.
It gave us a really important boost when we needed it.
We've always kind of been about how can we expand in certain areas that make sense, that are profitable for us. Having the knowledge and the seed money to help get you to that point has been huge for our business.
And that's what this initiative is trying to be smart about investing in Vermont. The Enterprise Board was established to oversee a fund, recognizing that, well, we want to invest in that which makes Vermont Vermont, to build on what is good about Vermont through the working landscape, and to have a strategic and a targeted and focused, thoughtful, intelligent process for actually investing in the businesses that make that happen.
With that investment comes a real opportunity to support the vibrancy of community, the vibrancy of place, and all of our connection to the land that we all feel is very special and an integral part of what Vermont is.
We've allocated over $3 million to support the working landscape, and that's been awarded to 112 different enterprises and activities. And what's most important is it's leveraged another $4.9 million of private investment into working landscape. It supports our economy, which is grounded in our working landscape with farm and forest activities. It supports the communities in which those businesses and activities are located. And that supports the culture that makes this state unique.
The We Love grant helped us get over the hump of some of the expenses that were associated with building the new barn and building it to the specs that would grow our business and take us into the future and not just a Band-Aid. We've also been able to expand our reaches and assist more farmers in giving them opportunities for poultry production. We're going to expand some of our offerings by doing our own sausage making. It's amazing, yeah.
So here's a case of something that we felt would really benefit Vermont Working Lands and Vermont agricultural businesses and farms, and the Working Lands Funds had the flexibility to help us put it in farmers' hands and demonstrate it. The systems that we installed are measuring temperature and humidity in the actual storage room, and the farmers can get the information on their smartphones.
The Working Lands grants allowed us to put up this infrastructure, put in these sensors for cooler environments, and all those pieces put together have allowed us to become more profitable, expand employees, year-round employees.
It helped these 9 farms demonstrate the technology, and others saw this and have since adopted it. And so that's a good example of the funding really helping everybody.
Without this grant, I'm not sure that we would have been able to advance things with Winterwood as much as we currently are able. So it was a real opportunity for us to be able to take a big step forward all at once. We're timber framers first, but we're doing things like butcher block countertops or pre-made staircases. We're hoping that by having a little bit broader reach of product diversity, that we'll be able to keep people employed even when the timber frame market is down. It's both a growth of idea and expansion of business, but it also seems to be so focused on Vermont and improving our own economy and really helping to keep the landscape working. And it really does, in the end, have a huge impact on our local economy. I have connections with lots of landowners in this town who want to sell us logs. We get them to the sawmill cuts them to our specifications, then we produce a finished product out of that. So it's a win-win for everybody.
We applied for Working Lands Grant because we were at a critical juncture in our business where we had great customers and we were able to produce the caramel, but it was really difficult week to week to balance out when the orders came in and when we had product. And we really needed a series of climate-controlled spaces that would help us maintain a balance in both the workflow for our employees and the high quality of our products. Working Lands Grant gave us $20,000, which allowed us to leverage an additional $220,000 on our creamery expansion. And we're really excited about where we are.
It's a really wonderful group of folks that enabled us to make what I believe have been some really good decisions and really assist growing that working landscape out there.
The diversity of the Working Lands Board, I think, is one of its strengths.
Vermont Working Lands Enterprise Fund has really provided very effective funding to really increase the value of the working lands and make them work even better.
It is the working landscape that makes us unique and special, and these grants and awards help retain that special character.
The Working Lands Enterprise Board is a concerted effort and a choice that the state of Vermont has made to make an investment in something that we all really value.
So the Working Lands Grant is available to folks that are interested in making projects or projects on their land. Anyone can apply. It can be a small project, a big project. And I would just Google Vermont Working Lands Vermont, and you should find out all sorts of information on that. Is this going to pop up?
Give it a, yeah, give it
Okay.
a second.
That's my screensaver.
There you go.
There we go. So if you have any projects or cool things that you think might affect the folks around you, I would suggest applying for it. So really quick again, back to the forest specialists. This website right here is a fantastic website. You can shorten it just by fprvermont.gov, and then you can navigate to it, or you can type in /forest/forest health. And this website is maintained by these folks like Jim. It looks like this, and a couple quick things to point out are things like monthly insect and disease observations, annual health reports, and look down here. I don't have a good, it kind of cut it off, but this thing is all their reports, and it just goes tick, 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 tick all the way down. So if you're interested in monitoring the health of Vermont and their forests, which if you're a forest landowner, you should be, this is a fantastic asset for you. And that's everything I have. So folks have any questions or anything, I'd be happy to answer.
Could you go back a screen? I want to zoom in on that,
Sure.
get your information.
That's my information right there.
Okay.
VTinvasives.org is the invasive
VT
website.
invasives.
Yep. VTinvasives.org.
Nice bear at the end.
Yeah, a friend of mine, Mary Beth,
Ah.
took that picture. It's actually caught by Fish and Wildlife. You can see kind of this is part of the
Oh, yeah, there
bear
it is.
collaring project. There's a thing, yeah, they catch them on this thing, and then they have to go catch them and get them with this tranquilizer thing on a stick.
That was fun.
A
A friend of mine used to do that.
Oh, cool, yeah, yeah. So I guess Mary Beth was the one they used to put into check the bear cubs because she was small enough to
Oh.
fit. Anyway, yeah, so I just used that picture because it's
It's
awesome.
a great picture. It's a great picture.
Yeah. Any questions about what the state of Vermont can offer landowners?
No, it's a great program,
Great.
you know, I think I get it. We obviously, we call you back and with all our questions.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
feel
yeah.
free to contact me anytime.
Except I'm moving, my property's in Danby, which is different counties.
Yeah, Chris Stone is your county forest land. He's great too.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
Yeah. I can give you 80. I can give you a phone number for
right. Oh,
him.
that'd be good.
Yeah, 802.
Oh, wait a minute, I got the right page here. Yeah.
802 786
Mhm.
0060.
And he was Chris Stone?
Yep, Chris Stone, and you'll get a prompt about push this button for this and work your way to him. Forestry and then Chris. Yeah. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Yeah, great.
Very
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I've got a question.
Sure.
Is Phyllis and Charles Mason members of the Grange here in Battenkill?
That's my grandparents, yeah.
It's great, I know them.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Grange with them.
Yeah, actually Jim White, the guy who used to be the original Bennington County Forester, and my grandfather had desks like right next to each other because
Oh, yeah?
he worked for the Department of Ag for a long time.
Yeah, oh, really?
Yeah, so small home.
Nice people.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kyle.